morning. This is Playing to Win with me, Mark Henderson Leary, and my good friend Brad Freyer. How are you, sir?
I am wonderful. Thank you, sir. How are you today?
I'm well. You always seem a little surprised when I come out.
Because literally, Monday morning, I get up, I exercise, and I'm just gaining altitude, as we hit our 8:30 mark. And then you come on at 8:30 and it's just, it's straight up. So
pure rocket fuel.
It's perfect. It gives me that punch in the stomach I need to get the morning rolling.
Yeah, man. Exactly. Because who doesn't need a punch in the stomach on a Monday morning?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about micromanagement today and what that means. But before, give me the download on your weekend, man. It's you had a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, man, it's a good weekend, full weekend. Friday night, my daughter made the drill team at the high school, so they had their show off where they showed all the parents and guests the routines for football season and all that fun stuff, and that was really, really fun to see. She'd been working towards that for 7 years, and so to finally have made the team and then got to show off was kind of cool.
That's cool.
Saturday did something for me. Got to play golf with bunch of good friends on Saturday morning, and so that was it was hot though. I mean, not like oppressively hot. 13 holes in, and you start thinking, where am I? I mean, it was hot, but that was a good time. And then yesterday my wife hosted a baby shower, so I spent the morning helping her set up and then the evening cleaning up. So,
nice, because there's nothing better for a guy than a baby shower.
I left. Yeah, as soon as the guests started rolling in, I rolled out. I peeled off. Yeah,
nice.
So
Good.
I left for a couple of hours. Yeah. Yeah. It was a good weekend.
That's a
good weekend.
That's a golden ticket right there. When you can do the setup and leave and come and just do cleanup, that's absolutely good.
Well, I was going to go play golf, but it was just too hot. Middle of the day, I was like, I can't do it.
Oh man,
morning or evening, got to do morning. So, but next weekend we're moving our oldest daughter off to college next Saturday. So this is going to be an interesting week.
Wow, moving. So next week you're moving off to college.
Next Saturday, yeah.
Like a week, a little less than a week, or a little more.
Yeah, 5 days.
Oof, yeah. So,
but you've already experienced that. So
I have. Now, I'm enjoying having her back in town, and so she's living with me all summer, and so it's kind of the countdown. I got like 3 weeks before she gets in the car and drives away, and I'm not looking forward to that.
We'll check in on Monday and tell you what kind of condition I'm in.
Yeah, it is not. Yeah, it's not about the kid being ready; it's about the parent. At least from my perspective.
Yeah.
I did not snap how hard it was going to be when that happened 2 years ago. But and it's coming back. And I heal quickly.
Yes.
But well, so let's talk about our subject, because I think there was some. I'm curious.
It came up last week.
Well, it did come up last week.
Yeah.
And so when your daughter was preparing for this 7 years, were you an involved parental coach?
This is dance. So
dance.
No.
Okay. So no. Okay.
The only things I did, and then the only things I've done for both my girls is support what their goals are and encourage the behaviors to achieve them, and finance the behaviors to achieve them. But no, I've told them, if you want to do something, you need to create a plan, work the plan, and constantly work at it. Those evenings that she didn't want to go to dance class or go to private lessons or whatever, it was like, look, this isn't an option. This is the path that you're on. So, you're committed. You're going to see it through.
So were there good coaches in her, and teachers and instructors in her career getting to that spot?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, she had several of them. Some of them were better than others, but yeah, I think obviously they contributed a lot to where she got.
How did she talk about those, or did you even observe? I'm going down a specific path, trying to mine something out of it. And if we don't find it, we'll do something different. But so, how did she engage? How did she work with those good coaches?
Yeah, I mean, the ones that she really liked, she resonated with. She respected, and they obviously had a way of connecting with her, with girls, with kids, that maybe others did not. So yeah, and she has a good work ethic. I mean, just about every night she goes into the gym and dances, and and some of her teachers gave her things to work on, and video yourself doing this, or give her specific exercises to do, and so yeah.
She ever come home and say, that coach is such a jerk? He won't let me, whatever. He's complaining about me being there late, and I think I'm going to find a new coach or a new sport. Did you ever do that?
No, she did not. My oldest had that conversation, but never did. Yeah,
it's interesting because one of the dynamic I'm trying to pull out of this is that coaching and bossing are very different by DNA, and I think one of the biggest differences is the nature of opt-in. Like if I'm going to choose a coach, it's because I have a presumed outcome I'm trying to pursue, and I believe the coach I'm enrolling with, and there's the tutelage and the master and the student kind of dynamic of like I choose a coach, but the coach also says like, you're not on my level. So but there is definitely a presumed alignment of goals and a willingness, if not a commitment or an extreme commitment of the student to listen to what the teacher and the coach is saying. Mm-hmm. And I think very often as a boss, we were like, what does that story have to do with me? Right? It's like, I just need shit done.
Yeah.
And these people are not doing it. And what we discover is that great leaders are closer to coaches, and great managers are closer to coaches than they are some sort of whip cracking, tough, mean person who just inspires through fear. Have you experienced that?
Oh, without question. Yeah. I mean, I think, everybody wants to work for someone that inspires them, that they feel good about, that they want to run through a brick wall for. Right? That's what everybody wants. At the end of the day, you want a leader that you want to follow, right? I mean, in order, the concept of being a leader implies that you have people following you, right? You're not a leader if people aren't following you, and so are you someone who leads by the front, or are you someone who leads from the back? Right. Yeah. And leading from the front is what I think people resonate most with, right? They see somebody who's mutually accountable, who has integrity, who leads by example, who earns trust and respect. I mean, all of those things versus someone in the back who, and I've known people like this in my life who, hey, I own this company, I cut your check. You need to do what I say.
Right. Yeah.
And anytime someone, and I've heard people actually say those words, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Hey, that check came from me. And anytime you feel compelled to have to say that, you clearly are not leading. You're pushing.
It is the weakest, most pathetic leadership. Now, I get it if you have a moment. Like if you have a moment, you're just frustrated and that blurts out of your mouth, that's fine. But you better go frickin' apologize for that, and you better get your act together because you're missing something. You don't have a purpose. And so the coaching metaphor is, and it's really simile, not a metaphor, is that there's a clear common goal, clear common objective. And the coach doesn't say, there's no I write the check. I don't. I get the check. you write the check. In fact, and you pay for the privilege to be in my presence, and I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. And so if you don't like doing that, why are you here? And so the alignment is much more obvious because that is sort of the predicate of any of the conversation. We take it back to the business. Well, if you're the leader, you're the manager, you're whatever, you have the obligation to explore and discover what the common interests are. Now, your employees also have an obligation too. They shouldn't take jobs where their gifts and their 10X aren't able to be utilized, but you got to own it on both sides.
But also understand, I was having this conversation with a gentleman probably 2 weeks ago, and we were having a conversation about his team, and he was feeling a little bit frustrated with his team, and I said, well, let me ask you this: you're trying to motivate them, you're trying to inspire them. Why do you think they show up every day? He said they show up every day because they're passionate about what they do, and da 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 da. And I said, no, they show up every day because they need a job, right? And they have to have a job to pay their bills, to live the life, to do whatever they want to do. Now, in addition to that, maybe they had the good fortune of landing in a place where they are inspired and they have a fulfilling and rewarding job and a leader that cares about them. I say, but understand, let's not misunderstand why people go to work every day.
That's brilliant, right? Because most people think of it as binary. Oh, is it because they need the job? Oh, no, because they're inspired. Oh, no, because they love the manager. Oh, no, like, wait, it's Maslowian. You know, it's the Maslow's hierarchy. It's all of those. They have a need for a paycheck. And once they got that figured out, they have a desire for a job that they love. And beyond that, they want to make an impact. And all those layer on each other. And if you, and that's the essence of what you're talking about. So if you ever put one of those lower levels in question, the upper levels don't matter. You know,
right. That's exactly right. And that was the conversation we were having. It was like, well, what's going to, because we were talking about behavioral change, and, you know, and he says, don't they understand that if we do this little change, it's going to greatly impact the company? And I said, I don't think that matters. Right.
Well, unless you got to connect the dots. Why does that matter to them?
Because it's not going to affect the bottom line for them, right? And so he's thinking, well, you know, this is their passion and they love what they do and da 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 da. Yeah. That's not what drives them to come in every day. That's the bonus that they got by choosing the right job for them. But the reason they show up every day is because they want the paycheck. They need the paycheck. And so then the question becomes, okay, if we're trying to affect behavioral change, what's going to create that, right? Yeah. What's going to incentivize that? What's going to prompt action?
Well, and the idea of the change isn't just that specific example. I don't know what the change was, but everybody likes change when it's their change. When it's somebody else's change, it's terrible. Yeah. Change is risk. Even if it's ostensibly good change, change is risky. It changes patterns. It's expensive. It's unnerving. It throws you off your game. It gives you new habits, new conversations, new outcomes.
Well, and this one specifically was, you know, obviously I do sales and leadership training, so it's sales related. But he had a group of people that he wants to begin doing some outbounding, and they don't see themselves as salespeople. They don't want to do a sales role, and it's not a lot, you know, maybe 5 outbounds a day or something. But you know, he's frustrated because they're not doing it, and you know, but don't they get it that this would be so amazing for the company to take us to a whole new level? And yeah, it's not why they do it. It's not why they show up every day.
Yeah, it's visionary thinking. I do it, and that is basically skipping so many steps of I'm that classic visionary where I see how this is going to end up, and I'm not all that great at recognizing how much time it's going to take and how much it's going to cost to get there, and that there's going to be risks and bumps along the way, and there's near-term problems that other people might find a little more urgent. You know, we need to get to the rest of the week, Mark. That's a great vision for next year, but you know, we got a things we got to do right now.
Yeah, I got my own stuff I'm worried about. I just want to get through the week. You know, let's let me do what I've become accustomed to doing. Let me stay in my comfort zone. Let me keep my habits rolling because I like where I am.
So the whole predicate here was micromanagement, and I like the vein we're on, and I want to tie it back to that. And so 2 things that come up in micromanagement that I would love to unpack. One is this idea of not having clear goals and not having clear purpose. And so if I don't know how to inspire you, I might just tell you what to do, because that's all I got. And other times there's the perfectionist thinking of, you know, I really haven't figured out how to coach you to a level of excellence that I'm comfortable with. And so I'm just going to keep taking it off your plate and keep doing it, or keep telling you exactly what to do, as opposed to letting you become your own autonomous, creative, capable, different animal. Which one do you see more common, or what do you see?
Well, yeah, I think we first have to define micromanagement.
Fair enough.
You know, because the biggest problem I have with that term or that phrase is that most people misuse it as an excuse not to do their job.
All right, yeah. So both sides of the coin, for sure.
Yeah, because micromanagement is not holding people accountable. Micromanagement is not, you know, having KPIs that you measure to. There's all these things that a manager should be doing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, but gets a pass because they say, I don't want to be a micromanager.
Yeah, man.
My people don't respond. Those are 2 different things, right?
Yeah.
Holding people accountable, setting expectations, tracking behavior, tracking results, managing KPIs. That's not micromanagement. That's being a leader. That's being a manager. That's holding people accountable.
Yeah.
But, so when salespeople or employees or leaders say, oh, we don't like to micromanage around here, that's code for, I don't want to pay attention to what people are doing at all.
Oh man! So
until it's too late,
for sure. And I want to. Your world is especially challenging, and I'm going to hold the thought on it because I think people need to know this. Particularly, the leadership needs to understand the number one mistake I believe that causes that, and I'll be curious if you agree. But the first thing that I see in an organization is when from the highest level leadership, the visionary leader, visionary entrepreneur. Oftentimes, that visionary entrepreneur is not really execution oriented. They're not internally motivated, and so we have this function in the EOS system we call the integrator, which is that leader who is the one who really understands how to build an accountable machine who can lead and manage leaders and help the organization run. So the visionary can really focus on outward things like the bigger vision and big opportunities and all the emotional needs of the organization and really fuel the vision to grow and move into the future. And that integrator focuses on that execution, that data, the discipline, and all that. And so what I sometimes find is once we've got that integrator in place and we talk about that integrator, people start saying things like, I need an integrator for this. I need an integrator for that. And I'm like, wait, you missed the concept. The integrator is a specifically unique one seat in the entire organization that pairs up with that visionary to make sure things happen. Why do you keep thinking you need an integrator? And what I've learned is what they're asking for are managers. They've never had one before. They don't know. And I'm not kidding. When the light goes on, I go, oh, they've never had anybody who actually drew accountability from results, who actually measured the outcomes and said, oh, by the way, this is not acceptable. We're going to have to make a change here. So to think that your organization definitely has management in there at all is not a guarantee. I mean, in any size. I mean, some pretty large organizations I've worked with don't have an ethos of real management, which in essence is, what are people saying? Get the communication flowing. Look at the data. Is it working? Are these people happy? Are you happy? Measure that kind of thing. And so that's a big aspect of that. But I want to take this back to what I from my leadership perspective, I deal with that all day long. But your sales world, is it crazy to think that people keep promoting their best salespeople to be managers, and the salespeople aren't managers? And when they say, I don't like to micromanage, means I don't even like people. I don't even want to work with the numbers at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things, right? Number one is you're absolutely right. That happens all the time. And I've seen it from both sides of the fence. I've seen it from every different angle where, a company promotes the best selling salesperson, puts them into a management role. They fail miserably because it's a completely different skill set, right? But I've also had salespeople who've come to me and said, hey, I'm being given an opportunity to be a manager and I'm so excited. And I'm like, well, hold on. Do you know what you're getting into?
Right.
You went from having to worry about yourself every day to now having to worry about 10 or 12 people. You've gone from an environment where you knew exactly what to do all day, every day. And now I said, are you sure you want to do this? And so people too often take it as an ego stroke, as opposed to really paying attention to how the job function is going to change. And I've seen so many people hate it. And then it's so difficult to swallow the pride and go back to sales that they end up leaving the company.
Yeah. Right? Which is terrible, right?
It's terrible. It's terrible.
Because they were probably crushing it as an individual contributor.
Yeah. It's two different skill sets. I mean, being a salesperson and being a leader are two different skill sets. Now, there are people that can do both, but they're not the same job function.
Well, so I have that problem a lot with leaders, and I say, and I do this a lot with the leadership team, and I say, you're pulling in a high producing individual contributor and you're putting him into a leadership position. I don't see that leadership position, as important for your organization as it is, as highly compensated as your individual contributors. Is that crazy? And I really want them to think about that, because some particularly in high dollar sales situations, individual contributors are worth way more than that manager who just pulls the numbers in. Do you counsel people through the situation? Like, hey, you've got a $100,000, $150,000 sales manager here, and you've got a $300,000 sales rep, and you need to, because they're closing insanely large deals. How do you handle that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it's necessarily one size fits all, because there are some situations where a sales manager can have such an impact on the team that they should be compensated, relatively closely to a top producing salesperson. But they're going to be held accountable to, hey, look, you got this, you got this number, so you got to figure out how you're going to get to it. And they oftentimes are heavily incentivized by results, right? Maybe even to a rate of 50-50, 50% salary, 50% at risk. And so, but yeah, for salespeople, top producing salespeople are often the highest paid people in the company.
Yeah, and
it's very difficult for a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders and owners to accept that. But sometimes it's misaligned because their comp plans are bad. And so sometimes you got these salespeople making huge money off of annuities that they don't have to do anything, and it's just an evergreen. And they kind of do some customer service along the way, and they continue to make figures, high six figures. And those are bad comp plans, right? I mean, because
or just bad structure in the business. Because I come from the services background. Like hunting new clients is hard. Taking care of an existing, and so you
deserves to be paid.
Pay them well. And you pull them out of the process as soon as it gets easier, and you give it to somebody who wants an easier job, and you pay them appropriate for that being an easier job.
That's right. Yeah, account management, client success, customer service, customer care. All those roles are great back in, and you don't have to pay them fat six figures. But yes, salespeople should get paid for the hard work, and the hard work is driving new business, retaining customers. Although it requires effort and a process and a plan, and it's not hard, right? You're not having to knock on doors. You're not having to deal with rejection. You're not having to, to stay up at night wondering if and how and when this thing's ever going to close.
There's a lot of process on both sides, but the net new is very skill driven, and the retention, happiness, account management is much more process driven. I mean, these are your friends. These are people you already know. You can build relationships with these people. It's not a new surprise every single day. Where on the net new side is turning chaos into order. People you've never met before, people you've never talked to before, problems that you don't understand yet. You've got to turn that into an opportunity and a solution for the client, as opposed to account management. It's like, we've got all the data. We've known you for between 6 weeks and 6 years. And that's the difference.
So micromanagement.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, no, you'll take your lessons from this or not. So micromanagement, I loved where you kind of, when I go to it, I still resist it, right? Micromanagement to me is weak leadership. But you're also saying it's also lack of accountability. So it's weak in the opposite way. Like if you
it's
can't,
an excuse.
So for me, I'm really watching out for somebody who's not going to learn how to grow their people. So to become a leader and manager, it's no longer your skill set. That your valuable skill set is no longer your craft, your former craft. Your new craft, your valuable skill set is growing people. In many cases, it's who are also crafts people. You're going to now teach new crafts people. But as you work your way up into the organization, your job becomes growing leaders and managers their job is to grow crafts people.
Your number one, this is something I tell clients all the time, your number one job function as a manager is to get the most out of the people that work for you.
Yeah.
But your job is not a task monger. Your job is not, your only job as a manager, the only purpose managers exist is to elevate people. I mean, that's the only reason you need managers is to get the most out of the people on the team. And the only way you can do that is by identifying where they are, where they need to go, and what's it going to take to get there, and hold them accountable for the process in attaining, right? Whether it's behaviors to achieve their business goals, whether it's the behaviors to improve them professionally or personally. But as a manager, we need to have accountability, and accountability is not a bad word. Right?
No.
It is so healthy, so productive. It's important to have boundaries. It's important to let people know what's expected of them, and then to let them know that you're actually paying attention to it.
Yeah.
Because if you ask people to do something and then you don't pay attention to it, you've just taught them that whatever you say doesn't really matter.
So to get after what you're describing, you've got to know what you want. Which is the hard part. So if you don't know what you want, you're 14 metrics, 25 metrics of an individual, and you're always unhappy with them, then you're not going to be able to coach them to where you need them to be. You have to have that handful. I mean, on an individual basis, 1, 2, or 3 critical numbers. You got to have no more than about 5 roles in their seat. They're accountable to, maybe even less, particularly in a sales function. And you got to really be able to have clarity as to why that matters. When I sit down in front of very accountable teams, I say, we're going to measure you. And people in the front row are like, yes, you will, because I kick ass and I want to show you. And it's going to be amazing and we're going to all, raise the game together. And so if you're going to be the leader and the manager of a team who wants to be seen, you've got to be able to have a discerning conversation about what truly matters. And so you can keep it fair and you can get what you want. And when you don't get what you need, you can say, hey, this isn't working. We're going to have to make a change.
Right. And think about this too, right? One of the things I heard umpteen years ago was that if you ever lay somebody off and they're surprised, that's on you as a manager because you didn't let them know that they were failing at their job before it became too late.
I did that horribly bad.
And that's about accountability, right?
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
About having those regular conversations. We call them WIMs, weekly individual meetings. Just sitting down on a weekly basis and having a conversation about, okay, what were your goals last week? What were the behavior goals? What were the attitude goals? What were the results we were trying to achieve? Did we achieve them? Okay, what's the goals for this week? What do you need from me? What support do you need? Yada, yada. And having that conversation every single week. And for some people, it's like, oh, Brad, but that becomes so mundane, so monotonous. If it's becoming mundane and monotonous, that means you're not challenging your people. You're not challenging your business. You're not trying to grow. You're in status quo. And if you're in status quo, then you don't need to be listening to this show because you're not playing to win. You're playing to sustain.
Yeah. Think about sports. If the high jump, it's the same jump every single time. It's boring. I've done the jump.
Add alligators and tigers and like it's challenging.
So you got to decide what game you're in. If you want to be a world champion high jumper, then it's exciting every single time you get close to moving it up a little quarter inch or a millimeter. I don't know what the increments are, but there's not very much. So
that's a great point. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's always something they're striving to do better. They're always, technique or stretching or weight lift, something to improve what they do. And coming off the heels of the Olympics, it's a perfect time because all these people do. I was talking to my kids. We were watching swimming, and I was like, oh God, I can't imagine that being my thing. Where every day I spend 6 hours in a pool.
No,
I was like, oh.
No,
at least if I'm running, I can run in different environments and atmospheres. But if I'm swimming, I'm heading down in water.
It's always all that damn water.
All that damn water, and I love the water. But so as a leader, you don't be afraid of accountability. In fact, lean into accountability and build the accountability plan with your team. Right? I love it when companies start off salespeople by giving them the option to build their prospecting plan and their accountability plan. Say, hey, here's your first piece of homework. I want you to, build up your prospecting plan. What are you going to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? And what's it going to look like? They build it out. We talk about it. Yes, I like this. Don't like that. Maybe we tweak this. Great. We all agree. Okay. How are we going to talk about it moving forward? And build an accountability plan, a cadence, and don't be afraid of it being micromanagement, because micromanagement is actually standing over somebody's shoulder, telling them, no, push the A button now. Okay, now push the B button. Okay, now telling them how to do their job while they're doing it. That's micromanagement.
Awesome.
Not holding people accountable.
We are way out of time.
Sorry, go.
No, so it's good stuff. And so I said, and when we get into the groove like that, we kind of get into the flow. I know we're in something meaningful. So if anybody's getting stuck here, here's the essence of where we're at. You got to have accountability. People want accountability. They need it. People want to be coached to be their very best. For them to do that, you got to know what you want from them. And it's not that hard in the end, but it can be overwhelming. There's a lot of things you could measure. There's a lot of things you could want from your salespeople, to friendliness and account management and all these kind of things. If you're stuck, reach out to Brad. Brad knows all about this and has helped me. So seriously, walk you through a conversation of what are the key. Do you have a process in place? If you don't, that's going to be a problem. If you have a process and you don't know what to measure, Brad can help you with that. So I hope you do. If you're stuck, it's really powerful for your sales people and the sales process to have those things to measure a handful of critical things. And so that's how you cut through micromanagement, knowing the handful of most important things to measure and actually measuring them. And if you don't get what you're expecting or what you need you need to make a change. That's it for this week. We will see you next time on Play to Win with me, your good friend Brad.
Have a good one.
Bye.